Portland Community College. Lab Activity 35. Embryology, Portland Community College. Byte 233. Fertilization. A sperm can survive for 48 to 72 hours in the female reproductive tract. It takes about 10 hours to navigate into the ampulla of the fallopian tube where fertilization occurs. Zygote. A zygote is formed when the nucleus of the sperm and ovum combine to create a cell with 23 pairs of chromosomes, prior to the start of cleavage. Fertilization occurs in the ampulla of the uterine tube within 24 hours after ovulation. Oocyte dies after 24 hours. From fertilization to implantation. Formation of the morula. Cleavage, rapid mitotic cell division, without cell growth, that subdivides the cytoplasm of the zygote. Cleavage produces daughter cells called blastomeres. The zona pellucida remains around the entire group of cells. Morula. After 3 days of cleavage, a solid ball of cells has formed that resembles a mulberry, similar to a marionberry. This morula contains 16 or more cells. Blastocyst. By the 4th or 5th day the morula develops into a fluid-filled hollow sphere called a blastocyst. Blastocyst contains 3 parts. Trophoblast, the outer layer of cells. Take part in placenta formation. Inner cell mass, a group of cells clustered at one side of the blastocyst. Becomes the embryo. Blastocele, the fluid-filled cavity, blastocyst. Implantation. By day 6 or 7 the trophoblast will adhere to the endometrium with the inner cell mass side facing the uterine wall. The trophoblast cells proliferate and form 2 distinct layers. Syncytiotrophoblast, cells on the perimeter touching the endometrium. Syncytiotrophoblast, cells on the interior of the trophoblast that retain their cell boundaries. Implantation. Implantation. Syncytiotrophoblast. At the point of contact between the trophoblast and the endometrium, the dividing cells lose their plasma membranes. This creates a syncytium in which there is a layer of cytoplasm containing multiple nuclei. The syncytiotrophoblast erodes a path through the uterine endometrium by secreting hyaluronides. The implanted blastocyst will eventually be covered over by endometrial cells. Implantation. Viability of the corpus luteum is maintained by human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, secreted by the trophoblast. HCG prompts the corpus luteum to continue to secrete progesterone and estrogen. Between the 2nd and 3rd month, the placenta assumes the role of progesterone and estrogen production. Chorionic villi. Chorionic villi are extensions of the cytotrophoblast covered with syncytiotrophoblast that extend into the maternal blood-filled spaces, lacunae. Maternal blood will exchange nutrients through these villi that will eventually contain embryonic vessels. Embryonic disc. The inner cell mass organizes into an oval sheet with 2 layers, the embryonic disc. Ectoderm, the layer closest to the attachment of the trophoblast. Endoderm, the layer closest to the blastocele. Amniotic cavity. The inner cell mass will separate from the trophoblast during implantation. The ectoderm cells will migrate and form a fluid-filled chamber, the amniotic cavity. Amnion, mesodermal cells will soon create the outer second layer of the amnion. The fluid and membranes will surround and cushion the developing embryo and fetus. Yolk sac. Begins as the endodermal cells spread around the outer edges of the blastocele. The yolk sac is completed as the mesoderm cells migrate around the pouch. Site of embryonic blood cells and gonadal stem cells. Gastrulation. This is the term for the process by which a 3rd layer of cells called the mesoderm, forms between the ectoderm and endoderm. Primitive streak, raised dorsal groove that establishes the longitudinal axis of the embryo. Gastrulation sets the stage for organogenesis, the formation of body organs. Gastrulation. Gastrulation. Primary germ layers serve as primitive tissues from which all body organs will be derived. Endoderm. Epithelial lining of GI and lower respiratory tract. All ducts entering the GI tract. Urinary bladder. Ectoderm. Nervous system. Epidermis. Lining of mouth, and anus. Sense organs such as eyes. Primary germ layers mesoderm, muscle bone cartilage blood. Dermis and hypodermis. Kidneys, ovaries, testes. Lining of body cavities, ectoderm. Mesoderm. Endoderm. Approximately 13 days after fertilization. 21 to 23 days after fertilization. Actual size 1.0 to 1.5 mm. 28 days after fertilization. Actual size 4 to 6 mm. By the end of week 4 there is significant development of the nervous system, heart, body form and placenta. The embryo starts receiving nutrients and oxygen through the placenta. Embryonic membranes, chorion and allantois. Allantois, a small outpocketing at the caudal end of the yolk sac. Structural base for the umbilical cord. Becomes part of the urinary bladder. Chorion. Becomes the embryonic contribution to the placenta. Derived from trophoblast and mesoderm lining it. Contains the chorionic villi. Umbilical cord connects the embryo/fetus to the placenta. Contains 2 arteries and 1 vein. 2 arteries. 1 vein. Placenta. The placenta is fully formed and functional by the 3rd month of pregnancy. Chorion of embryo and stratum functionalist layer of uterus. Chorionic villi extend into maternal blood-filled intervallous spaces. Maternal and fetal blood vessels do not join and blood does not mix. Diffusion of O2, nutrients, wastes. Stores nutrients and produces hormones. Barrier to microorganisms, except some viruses. AIDS, measles, chickenpox, poliomyelitis, encephalitis. Endocrine placenta. Human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, maintains the integrity of the corpus luteum and promotes the continued secretion of progesterone. Human placental lactogen, HPL, and placental prolactin, prepare the mammary glands for milk production. Endocrine placenta. Relaxin, which relaxes connective tissue of pelvis and cervix. Suppresses the release of oxytocin by the hypothalamus. Progesterone and estrogens, maintain the endometrial lining, placenta. This side faces a baby. This side touches a uterus. Gestation fetal period, begins at week 9. All major organs have been established. This is the time of growth. Gestation, 40 weeks measured from the first day of the uterine cycle, day 1 of menstruation. Actually only 38 weeks from fertilization. Fetal period. 56 days after fertilization. Actual size, 30 mm.